Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to our 7th webinar for this year. And we thank you all for being part of it, because we very much enjoy bringing you these education programs. And we know from the feedback we've been getting that you've enjoyed them as well. This week's topic is anti-doping education, keeping canoeing clean, an incredibly important topic, obviously, in our sport. And 1 year out from Tokyo 2020, what a better time to talk about some of the issues that are in this area and what might lie ahead. Our presenter this morning is Christian Trajano. He's a doctor. He's also manager of anti-doping education and prevention at the Brazil Olympic Committee. He's a former technical director of Brazil's national anti-doping organization, and he also has expertise in therapeutic use exemptions. And he's also, importantly, a keen paddler, as you can tell from his background. He's actually sitting out on his canoe today, which is nice. Very, very peaceful day there, obviously, in Brazil. The deal is the same as every week. If you have questions, please go to the Q&A tab at the bottom of the page. Click on that. You can type your question in there. If you see a question that you like, please do like it, because the more likes that a question gets, the more chance there is that it will be asked at the end of the show. Now, Christian will be presenting several videos during his presentation, and we'll put the links to those videos in the chat column of this panel. So if you want to check on those videos for yourself, you'll see the links pop up there. Yes, so I'm going to hand over to you now then, Christian, for this presentation, and then I'll rejoin you in about 45 minutes. So good luck.
Thank you, Ross. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon for everyone attending this here today. Here in Brazil, it's early in the morning. We start sharing my screen now, okay. As Ross said, we have some issues with the video to play live. So there is some QR codes you can scan and watch them as you wish later. It is with great pleasure that I will talk to you about doping prevention. We all know that this is not an attractive issue, and as it were the last performance education webinars, but I will do my best to hold your attention for the next 45 minutes. As I said before, I brought some videos, but due to technical issues, we will not broadcasting it live. So you will be able to scan the QR codes and then you can see. Please check the videos, it's very good. You will find some helpful information. So we'll start this warm-up session with the Q&A. And the first one I would like to ask you, it's what is doping? If I'm not wrong, since 2019, ICF requires all international level athletes to take anti-doping education as a requisite to participate in its events, such as world championships. But to prevent doping, we must go further than any learning course or even such webinars. So I start with these two questions. What is doping? And what is this so-called spirit of sport? We've been calling coaches and all athlete support personnel with the approach of values-based education, reinforcing the core Olympic values, respect, friendship, and excellence. Those are ancient values, and doping is not a new agenda either. I prepared a timeline of some remarkable doping events to warm you up, but I said before that we will not be able to see it live. So from the ancient history, the mankind just look for some substances to enhance performance. And from the last century to the 90s, the end of the 90s, we saw many doping cases. Since the doping control started in the Mexico 68 Olympics, that at that time there were a few methods to detect the prohibited substances. So it was a lack of harmonization. So each sports have its own rules, and the IOC tried to put this under one rule for the Olympics, but this lack of harmonization caused many issues in this fight against doping. So doping is as old as it is a sport. At the end of the 90s, it became a threat to the beauty of sport. And as I said, the lack of standardized rules among countries and sports made the fight against doping an incredible mess. So in 1999, IOC and the sports movement gathered with governments to create an organization to accomplish this burden of harmonization. And now, from 1999, we have WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, but we still have the IOC, the international federations, and now the national anti-doping organizations. And from 2018, the ITA. We also have the IPC, the Court of Arbitration of Sports. So who's who in this global anti-doping governance? So the World Anti-Doping Agency is responsible to harmonize all the rules and operations of doping control for all sports, for all the signatories countries. And IOC it's a major event organizer, so it's responsible for the doping control in their events, the Olympic Games, the Youth Olympic Games, the Winter Olympic Games, and so on. The International Canoe Federation is, as the other international federations, are anti-doping organizations, and they also have this they test distribution plan, and they are able to conduct tests and do all the same holds as a national anti-doping organization. In the slide, this is the logo of our national anti-doping organization, the ABCD. And in your country, you may have yours also. And in the national level, the National Anti-Doping Organization is the authority to conduct tests and hearings and results management and so on. This new anti-doping organization from 2018 is the ITA. The ITA is the International Testing Agency, and it was created by IOC and WADA and the sports movement that wants to keep the anti-doping operations far from the sports movement. And so from 2018, the operation in the Olympics will be conducted by the ITA, but the IOC remains responsible for the whole operation. So the anti-doping community may be a little bit different in your country, but they work the same manner as in Brazil, as you will see in the video. Here in Brazil, we have the National Anti-Doping Organization. We have anti-doping justice that have one court, one particular court to the hearings about doping, and if the athlete appeals, it goes to the Court of Arbitration of Sport in Switzerland. Well, thank you. You were all set now. So let's get back to our first question. What is doping? Doping is defined broadly as the use of substances or methods to enhance sports performance. But sports science is spinning after new compounds, training methods, and new technology, and all of them to enhance performance. And there is nothing wrong with it. So this is not the definition of doping. If we introduce one word in this sentence, we can fix it: prohibited. And this is the takeaway message about the definition of doping and when. You must be aware. Not just one word can destroy an entire work as a coach or an entire career if you are an athlete. Just this word, prohibited. And you will find what I mean later in the end of this presentation. But keep in mind this: just one word can make the difference. So the perfect definition, or the right definition for doping, is the violation of any anti-doping rule set forth by the World Anti-Doping Code. So we have now 10 anti-doping rules in the actual code. It will be changed in 2021 as we about to have the new code from 1st of January of next year. So these 10 anti-doping rules, just the first one is similar of that broadly known definition of doping. The first one is the presence, and this one is easy to understand. The presence of any prohibited substances or its metabolites in the athlete sample. But we have 9 more. And the second one is use or attempted use of any prohibited substances. I know this may sound a bit of magic, since how we can prove you're attempting. This is what the athlete's biological passport is for. So through the ABP program, we are able to detect and identify some effects at the athlete's body of the use of prohibited substance without detecting the substance itself. So this second anti-doping rule violation is about that. The third one is to refuse or evade. Refuse to provide a sample or evade a sample collection. It's a rule violation. And this particular one, ASP and coaches can protect athletes from a 4-year ban. Yeah, you heard right, 4-year ban. If an athlete refuse or evade a doping control station, it will be sanctioned by a 4-year ban. So talk, especially with athletes that never went to a doping control station, that this is part of their profession, and never, for any reason, evade a doping control station if you were notified to provide a sample. The first contact of the athlete must be within education. And this is a good way to prevent this third anti-doping rule violation. The fourth one is whereabouts. Some high-level athletes or any other athletes that an anti-doping organization wants to keep a close look at will be required to provide their whereabouts. Failing to comply is an anti-doping rule violation. This is another one that ASP and coaches can help prevent. Check with your athletes if they fulfilled their whereabouts into the ADAMS. Tampering or attempt tampering with the sample collection. This includes lying to an anti-doping organization. If in any situation athletes are argued by any anti-doping organization for justify, for example, if why they didn't fulfill their whereabouts, and they were kept lying in these statements, he will be, or she may be sanctioned for tampering. And we are having another creative endeavors like substitute urine and many other ones. Possession and trafficking are easy to understand. If you can use a prohibited substance or method, you may not have it under your guard, or even sell or distribute it. This is especially important with delegations that fly abroad, and some parents ask you for buying some supplements, and if you scotch with a supplement that have prohibited substance, you may be in trouble. Administration. It is an anti-doping rule violation. Administrate a prohibited substance to an athlete. You may remember some cases from the East Germany that the athletes were involved in a scheme of doping, and high-profile government people just distribute, and coaches distribute steroids and anabolic steroids for the athletes. You will find it in the timeline video, the first video. At this point, you are convinced that some of these rules were developed to extend the reach of the sanctions far beyond the athletes. It's not just the athletes that can be sanctioned. And complicity can be understood as facilitating, assisting, or covering up any anti-doping rule violation. As when a staff of a team doesn't participate directly in a DRV, but knows or pays for it and benefits from the doping, it will be sanctioned as complicit. The prohibited association refers to associate professionally with someone banned. So if you were banned for an anti-doping rule violation, you must be far from sports. You cannot coach. You cannot, if you're a doctor, you cannot attend anyone as a physician. You must be far from the sport. So anyone that associates with someone banned could be sanctioned by prohibited association. And in 2021, we will have one more anti-doping rule violation. That is regard to the whistleblowers. So acting to discourage or retaliate against any person that reports doping will be an anti-doping rule violation. So as you saw, the anti-doping system works reactively. So when we detect some behavior that is against the anti-doping rules, we made another rule to catch these cheaters, you know. The first four rules applied exclusively for athletes, but the other 7 can reach coaches, medical personnel, and any other ASP. The code doesn't exist alone. There is a collection of documents that harmonize the rules and procedures in specific aspects, and they're called the international standards. Today we will be talking about 3 of them. But in this year, in 2021, we will have 2 new international standards. That will be the International Standards of Education and the Results Management International Standard. That will be with the 2021 Code Collection. The prohibited list, as I said, is one of these international standards. And it poses another question. What makes a substance or method to be included in this list? So, potential to enhance or actually enhance sports performance, if it represents an actual or potential health risk to the athlete, or it violates the spirit of sport. That's why it's so important to start with these values in our educational approach. If any substance or method combines 2 of those previous sentences, it will be prohibited in sport. And also, if a substance or method is prohibited, a substance or method is prohibited when it masks the effect or detection of prohibited substances and or has not been approved for human use. Some topics from this list. The list is reviewed annually. The new list comes into effect on 1st of January of each year and is published by WADA 3 months before coming to force. The new list, the 2021 list just arrived a week ago, and this will be in effect for the Tokyo Olympics. So it's time to you to check for the newcomers. There are substances and methods that are prohibited all times and substances prohibited just in competition. And some other substances prohibited in some particular sports just. One modification in the 2021 list is the in-competition period. It starts just before midnight on the day of the competition and goes through the end of such competition and the sample collection process related to such competition. So at 11:59 p.m. of the day before the competition, the athlete is scheduled for compete. Starts this in-competition period. Today, in the actual code, this period starts 12 hours before the beginning of the competition. So this is one modification in the prohibited list. And the next, the 2021 code that will be enforced through 1st of January. The list will also indicate some substance of abuse, referring to some substances frequently overused in society without any relation with the sports performance. The substances of abuse for the next list will be cocaine, heroin, MDMA, the ecstasy, and THC, the tetrahydrocannabinol. These substances continue to be prohibited, but in the case an athlete can prove that the use was not linked with the sports performance and declare himself a user, it will be applied a reduction in sanction. So they remain prohibited in sports and the periods that are stated by the list, but athletes will be granted a reduction in sanction if it's not linked to sports performance. But how to check your medicines? Since the list indicates chemical names, nor medicines, you can find some trouble looking for your medicines through the list. But we have some tools to check them. to check your medicines for prohibited substances. One example is Global Draw, available for checking medicines purchased in Canada, UK, USA, Switzerland, Japan, Australia, or New Zealand. So many other anti-doping organizations offer some tools. You can check these other countries' flag in the Global Draw, and will direct you for the country you want to check. But you can use Global Draw for the Olympics that comes in Japan. So it's nice to know how it works. It will be prompted after you find, if you choose some flag for this purchase country flag, you must fill this form with some information, the user type, if you were an athlete or coach. This doesn't matter for the status of prohibition of a substance, but you must check your user type. So in this example, I check the athlete, and my sport is canoe, and my nation of purchase of my medicine were United Kingdom, and I'm searching for Osterin. So the system will give me some options, and for Osterin there is just one option, that is enobosarm. And enobosarm, if I check enobosarm, it will shows the ingredient status and the contact of the national anti-doping organization, in this case the UKA anti-doping. If I need more information about this substance or medicine I'm checking for. In this example, Osterin is prohibited at all times. The user can print a PDF with the search details or save the reference number of that search. This is particularly important because it's a way to prove your good behavior, checking your medicines in advance of taking it. So it would be nice if you save this reference number or print this PDF search details. But even Global Draw or any other tool provided by any anti-doping organizations are essential to help athletes avoid unintentional doping. There is a big disclaimer that makes athletes remember the core doctrine of the code, the strict liability. The athletes are solely responsible for everything that enters their body. So if they were catch with a sample with the presence of a prohibited substance, they will be held responsible. Doesn't matter if there is if it was negligence or it was a fault or it was intentional or not. But talking about these prohibited substances, we came with another issues. And what about supplements? In 2001, the IOC sponsored a research conducted by scientists of the German Sport University in Cologne. And they tested supplements for contamination with anabolic steroids. As you will find at the timeline, the 90s have some athletes, many athletes that were catched with the presence of anabolic steroids in their samples, and they said they just consumed contaminated products. So IOC conducted this study and tested supplements from 634 non-hormonal supplements that came from 13 different countries, and 215 different suppliers, and just 8% bought on the internet. Almost all of them were bought in physical stores. And the finds were that 15% tested positive. This means that were sufficient concentrations of anabolic steroids to turn positive a urine sample from an athlete taking these products. So you must understand the risks that involves taking supplements. Remember when I said that it was just one word, prohibited? This is what I mean. An athlete don't decide to turn to steroids in a second, but make an athlete believe that to achieve high performance, the use of substances are inherent is one big step towards doping. It is just a word, from substances to prohibited substances. This starts when you suggest that sports drinks are better than water to rehydrate, that they better take pills to supply their vitamin needs, that drink hyperprotein shakes are better than a balanced nutrition, or that fat burners can help you get to your desired weight faster. So help athletes make an informed decision. They must seek professional advice before using a supplement. They must assess the needs and the risks of taking supplements, understand the risk of mislabeled supplements, and understand the strict liability principle. But I said before that anti-doping is driven by the protection of the athlete's health. What if an athlete needs a prohibited substance or method in the course of a legitimate medical treatment? The therapeutic use exemption, international standards, sets the criteria to grant this permission. And it must be a necessary treatment. The treatment won't enhance performance far from before the disease begins. So I cannot be a better athlete taking the treatment, taking the substance for my treatment. I just have to return my previous condition. There are no other therapeutic alternatives available. And this is not regard just other alternative that doesn't involve prohibited substances, because we know that in many countries there is just one way of treatment and there is no other alternative. So in the specific case, there are no other therapeutic alternatives available. The medical condition won't be a consequence, could not be a consequence of a prior abuse of a prohibited substance or method without a valid exemption. An example is the hypogonadism secondary to abuse of testosterone. In this case, the testicle stops producing the hormone, and the treatment for that may be the use of prohibited substances. In some cases, some hormonal modulators or testosterone itself for supplementation. And in this case, when the medical condition that justifies the request for a therapeutic use exemption would be a consequence of a prior abuse. So it can be granted to in this case. There are some cases, there is no time to have a TUE in advance of the treatment. So in this case, the therapeutic use exemption international standard grants a possibility to require a retroactive TUE. In this case, may be an emergency or urgent treatment. insufficient time or opportunity or other exceptional circumstances that prevents the athlete from request a TUI in advance. In some case, NADO prioritize some sports. For example, maybe in some country, football and soccer is the main sport in the country, and so the NADO just check in advance 2 weeks from this sport, and ice sports they just let the athlete require a retroactive TUE. The athletes was not international or national level, but was subject to testing. One example, if Christian, if me, just want to follow Sebastian in the World Championship, and I'm not an international or national level or even a no-level athlete, and I just want to compete in a World Championship. So I will be subject to test, and if I am taking any prohibited substance in the course of my treatment, I'll be able to ask for a retroactive TUE. Another criteria is if the athlete uses out of competition a substance that is only prohibited in competition. Let me explain you what is that about. When a substance is prohibited in competition, it means that these substances must be out of your body at the in competition period. So this new TUE international standard states that in these cases, if you can prove that you used the substance out of competition, the out of competition period, and there is a legitimate treatment in course, you may be granted a retroactive TUE in this case. It's especially important for the glycocorticoids. If the case in question is not represented in any provisions that we talked later, and it would be unfair not to grant a retroactive TUE, this is also a time that a TUE must be granted to the athlete. But, and whom to apply, and who will evaluate these requests? The national level athletes must apply for their NADO. International level athletes, in our case, applies for ICF. During the Olympic Games, if the athlete needs a TUE, it must apply to ITA or IOC. Recreational athletes must apply to another or to the IF. And the previous example that I told that I was competing in an international event that was sponsored by ICF, I must request this retroactive TUE for ICF. If I am competing in a national event, I must ask and apply this TUE request for my NADO. You can point your camera to this QR code to check ICF TUE requirements and download the form. There is many information regarding these TUE requests. All these TUEs they are checked and they examined by a group of physicians, sports physicians, that will check if the dose, if the route, it's compatible with the legitimate treatment your doctor is saying you want. So there is a scale of recognition of these TUEs, so you don't need to apply for many organizations at the same time. The TUE granted by an adult can be recognized by the International Federation. And the one granted by International Federation can be recognized by a major event organizer. In the case that an IF doesn't recognize a National Anti-Doping Organization, TUE, it may request more information for an athlete about this case and put it into Adams. And the same case applies to a major event organizers. For the Olympics, you must send your TUEs at least 30 days before the games start for the ITA to check if it's all okay. And make sure that the TUE is registered into Adams. The athletes can enter with her login at Adams and check if there is TUE valid registered into Adams in his or her account. WADA can review every TUE and can overturn a TUE at any time, and this is not disputable. So the athlete must not dispute any overturn of the TUE from the WADA. And now we've arrived to the doping control station. You have your TUE, you checked your substances, and now it's time to be able to provide a sample. All the procedures are described in the International Standard of Testing and Investigations. The steps of the sample collection session are, the first step is notification. A doping control officer will show his or her ID to the athlete and informs that she must provide a sample. The athlete has to report immediately to the doping control station. And from this time, from the notification to the end of the procedure, the athlete will be under direct observation of a chaperone or the DCO that did the notification. Athletes will be asked to provide a urine or blood sample. For urine sample collection, athletes will choose a sample collection kit and with a container, select a container, and have to make sure that it is sealed, that it's intact, and that all the numbers are the same. A DCO, who is the same gender as the athlete, will witness the sample being provided. Then they will split the urine sample into A and B bottles and seal them. They must review and sign the doping control form. A copy of the doping control form will be sent to their email address in the paperless system, or the DCO will give the athlete their copy in paper. One sample, the sample with one copy of the DCF that preserves the athlete's ID will be sent to an accredited laboratory to perform the analysis. So this is this sample collection procedures. And what are the athlete's rights during this doping control? The athlete can ask for a delay to report to the sample collection. In some cases, to attend a medal ceremony, to press commitments, to a cool down session, to receive medical treatment, to find a representative, to find an interpreter, to get an ID, or to continue competing in other events. In out of competition sample collection sessions, the athlete can finish a training session before report to the doping control station. The athletes also can ask for a modification in the procedure. This is especially important for our Paralympics and the athletes that have any problems, you can be hurt during the competition, and you cannot, for example, you cannot seal the bottles for yourself, and you can ask for a modification, to ask for your representative to seal the bottle for you. So this is a modification in the procedure, and you can ask that for the DCO responsible. And the athletes have the right to ask questions at any time. Athletes don't understand any time and any procedure, he can ask questions. The athlete's responsibilities are staying within the direct observation of the chaperone. Please understand, it's your responsibility to guarantee that your chaperone or your DCO, it's keeping an eye on you. So we have some cases that the athletes, they are fast and they want to run for to the podium or for a press commitment. So athletes must be sure that the chaperone and the DCO are with them. Other responsibility is show a valid ID. In major events, you have a credential, so you can use this credential as a valid ID, and you cannot change this credential with someone that appears with you. So this is tampering the doping control procedure. You may find this strange, but it happens in Rio Olympics. An athlete just exchanged his credential with a coach during the doping control station. So this situation was detected, and they were both put out of the Olympics. So the other responsibility is to report immediately to the doping control station, and exceptions are that those rights that I told before. So guys, we are reaching the end of this presentation, and my last words won't be about the consequences of doping, the health consequences of doping, the legal consequences of doping, nor the image consequences of doping. But instead, I would like to ask every one of you and every person of the athlete's entourage to keep this issue live in your daily conversations. I know this is a strange issue to talk about, and no one wants to talk about doping, especially when the press put some athletes under their targets, and when a doping case just prompts. But we must talk about it. We must talk, and it's not just the need. I'm not just talking about the need of webinars or staying in front of a computer for an e-learning course. I'm talking to you about just talk about it. Talk with your athletes. Talk with your friends about it. Keep this fresh in your mind, so you cannot. You must avoid an unintentional doping, such as taking a headache medicine with a stimulant, and this is not for performance enhancement, but it will be doping also. Getting closer to your athletes, you will know them, and they will be confident to talk about their necessities, anxieties, fears, and you will find the ground to reinforce the Olympic values we talked before in the beginning of our conversation. And reinforce these values, and in every moment you need. Remember that the concept of doping, it's a legal concept. but there is also an immoral concept, and when the talking about doping is contrary to the Olympic values, to the spirit of sport. So keep talking about this spirit of sport, these Olympic values, and why athletes chose to be athletes, to take sports as their lives. The sense of the prevention of any disease is the recognition of vulnerabilities. With doping is not different. And the vulnerabilities may be a change in clubs and teams, maybe lost in some important event, maybe a broke down with the girlfriend or boyfriend. So if you are a coach or an athlete support personnel, you must be close to your athletes, understand their needs, and check for these vulnerabilities. This is the time that doping could be presented as a way to keep these hard times short, you know. But this is it. Don't forget that sport is made of people. This would be my takeaway home message. You can point your camera to this QR code and check this video I made for our athletes. And if you have any other questions after this webinar, you can find some information in our website, the Brazilian Olympic Committee website. We have a page for anti-doping education. This second QR code, our email, you will be talking directly with me. And if you wish, and I will be glad if you do, check our YouTube playlist. Every week we have a new video of the anti-doping education, and the videos are available with English and Spanish subtitles, and the audio is in Portuguese. Thank you very much for your attention. That's it, Ross. The ground is yours.
Thank you so much for a great presentation. And I know that there's plenty of interest in this topic. As has probably already been mentioned, if you have questions, please go to the Q&A section. Question straight up for you, Christian. Can a coach be held responsible if one of his or her athletes is taking a doping substance? Or in what cases can the coach be responsible according to the rule? And in what case a coach can be sanctioned? I think there are different rules for different countries out there for this. I know in some countries a coach can be punished, whereas in others a coach might not be punished.
Okay, Ross, great question. Thanks, Mitchell. A coach can be, the rule is just one, Ross. The rule is equal for any country and for all sports. It's what was set forth by the World Anti-Doping Code. And in this particular question, a coach can be sanctioned if he or she is involved in the doping procedures, you know. If the coach, if the athletes took the medicines without the knowledge of a coach, he is not he cannot be held responsible for anything. But if he facilitates, he's have any kind of complicity, if he sells the medicine, the drugs for the athletes, or he administrates the prohibited substances of methods, he will be held responsible, and there are some anti-doping rule violations for that. So in this aspect that you said that in some countries are different rules, you may be talking about the local legal rules. In some countries, doping is considered a crime. So,
I think in China,
there is
for
not a
example,
sanction just in the sports. China will be, I think, in the next year. Italy is already, I know, and how it works after the judgment, after the hearing in the sports justice, you will be granted a sanction for this anti-doping rule violation, and in these countries, then this hearing, this process is transferred for the legal criminal justice. So you can also be respond for a crime, you know. But in the sports movement, in the sports world, the rules are equal for all the sports and all countries that are signatories of the World Anti-Doping Code. And Ross, I have a different example for that. We had a case. I won't be able to tell specifics about this case, but the coach the coach put an athlete for a game, and the athlete took prohibited substances that was prohibited in competition only, but the athlete was not able to compete. He just sit around to watch the game, you know. But the name of the athletes was in the papers of the competition, you know. And that the athletes was notified for a doping control sample collection, you know, and it was detected the substances that was prohibited. The athletes never played at that game. He was with no uniforms. He was just watching, but the coach just put his name on the list, you know. And so the athlete took a sanction, a reduced sanction, because the justice considered that it was a minimal fault, but the coach was held responsible for this case of doping, you know, because if the coach did not put the name of the athlete in the list, the athletes weren't be notified for a sample collection in this period, the in competition period, so it won't never be violate an anti-doping rule, you know. So this is an interesting example.
Yeah. What about the rules regarding providing an address for out-of-competition testing? Is that likely to change, do you believe, or will that remain the same, where an athlete has to provide an address when they're not competing so that they can be tested?
Yeah, some athletes that are in registered testing pool, they must provide their whereabouts. These whereabouts includes 1 hour that the athletes must be in a special place, and then the anti-doping organizations can find them and took a sample. So this whereabouts is required for these specific athletes. The athletes must be notified in advance that they must provide their whereabouts. They must provide the whereabouts in quarters, so they get into Adams, the system of WADA, and they must provide the place that will be in this 1 hour, where they train, where they will sleep at night, where their travel schedule. And for the Olympics, they have to inform their hotel. If they are not at the Olympic Village, they must provide their room number, the dates of their flights, and so many informations. But this is regarding specific athletes that are notified before, or in the case of the Olympics, every athlete that will be in the Olympics, the Olympic Games, must provide those whereabouts.
And if they are not where they say they are going to be, is it 3 times they can be, or is it different for different
Yes.
federations? Is there one rule that covers everybody?
It's the same rule for everybody. If they are not found 3 times in a period of 12 months consecutively, they understand of the anti-doping community that this athlete is avoiding a sample collection session, and this is an anti-doping rule violation, and he must be sanctioned for that anti-doping rule violation. You know, as I said in my webinar, the system is reactive, Ross. So in some time, they could never find Christian. So they asked Christian, "Where you are, man?" And they could never find me. So if an organization could never find an athlete, the athlete must be hiding himself. So if you were that case, you were violating anti-doping rule. But Ross, many athletes forget to fulfill their whereabouts at Adams, you know, and this is an ADRV that we must prevent as coaches, as ASP, as doctors. You must remember those guys that they must fulfill their whereabouts, and or they will be in trouble, you know.
For sure. Well, Christian Trajano, thank you so much for today, for the presentation. As always, we will put the full presentation online in a couple of days' time, so people can go back and look over it. We'll also put links up to some videos which are correspond with your presentation today. And of course, links to any other topics that you raised today. But obviously, there are many, many websites where people can go for more information. But as Christian said, stick with the reputable and the well-known websites. WADA especially is one which you can rely on to get all the up-to-date information. Thank you so much for your time. Next week, we will be looking at high-altitude training as our webinar. So please come on board, register for that if you have an interest in that. And next week will be our final in this series. There may be some more webinars coming up later in the year as well, though, which will give you more information about. Christian, thank you so much. Any final comments you'd like to make before we go?
No, I'm just thankful for you all to this invitation, and I will be here at any time you want to talk about that. And any coaches, any attendee that must and want to talk directly, just use our email that are in the QR code, and we will be more than happy to help.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll see you in Tokyo next year. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time today. We'll see you all again next week. Goodbye.